From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's Just the Tip-Sters with Melissa Morgan.
Bonjour.
If you got a tip you'd like Melissa to take a look at, an unsolved mystery, a local missing person case, a good excuse for not taking a bite out of your best friend's pineapple liver pizza, anything, tell us about it by calling the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837. Or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. You just might hear your tip on the podcast. And now here's your host, walking up slowly behind you at the top of the staircase, Melissa Morgan.
More cowbell? Oh, my beloved producer Mark, how you delight me so, except for when you say liver and pineapple pizza.
Pineapple liver pizza.
What is wrong with you?
I want a good excuse for not, if somebody serves that up to me, I'm going to have to think of a good excuse. So if anybody's got a good tip on how to turn that down politely.
Holy fuck shit.
I'm game.
You throw it on the floor and you run over it with your scooter. What? There's never been a liver pizza, Mark, and if there has, let's just not discuss it. Okay. We had an interesting conversation with one of our favorite restaurateurs who they have pizza on the menu, and Mark notified me that they had a pineapple pizza. I didn't even look at the menu because I was horrified. Is it called a Hawaiian pizza? Or
yes, it's
okay.
Called,
see,
yeah.
Typically the Hawaiian pizza is pineapple and ham, and no, just no. So liver and pineapple, I am seriously worried about your mental health.
I just was trying to think of the grossest thing.
Well, you did. You succeeded, my brother. You got it right. Liver and pineapple. I mean, I'm not sure I can go on with this podcast right now.
Certainly ruined the urge to have dessert tonight, which is
anything ever again. Perhaps it's a wonderful diet tip that you've just passed on to everyone. Just constantly think of liver and pineapple pizza, and you will never, ever be hungry again.
I'll bet there's people out there that sounds just delicious to.
There are not. And if there are, those people need to be shot in the back of the head so there's not a lot of bone fragments.
Okay, then.
Yeah. It was really funny when you said sneaking up the staircase behind you. That was funny. Because part 3 of Those Darn Peterson Boys includes and concludes with Michael Peterson, the star of the French documentary Suspicions, which looks like soup cans, the staircase and up the back staircase and down the back staircase and Stairs Are Us. It's been remodeled, 174 times. This case has more TV credits than Alan Alda. I mean, it's insane how many TV shows have profiled this case. So it makes perfect sense that over here on the Little Dog and Pony podcast show, that we cover it. However, no one will cover it as beautifully as we do, right, Producer Mark?
Oh, no one.
Exactly. So, part 3, Those Darn Peterson Boys. It dawned on me, I kept thinking that Drew Peterson was the most monstrous of the Peterson boys because he, has one wife that's still missing and will probably show up this year, and one wife he was actually convicted of killing, along with putting out a hit on his the DA who prosecuted him. And then Scott Peterson, I selfishly forgot about Connor. So Lacey and Connor, so he's killed 2. And now Michael Peterson was convicted of killing his wife, which was, there was going to be a retrial, and then he actually accepted an Alfred plea. But he was also accused of killing a neighbor in Germany. So all of these darn Peterson boys are at least implicated in 2 homicides each.
They are willing in the killing.
It's crazy. 2 each. I really, and as gross and disgusting as Drew Peterson is as a human being, it's hard to even call him that. And as interesting as Scott Peterson is, only for his lack of emotion and the rancid jury that convicted him because they wanted to go home, Michael Peterson still remains the most fascinating to me. He's quite a fascinating dude. So let's get into this. So Michael Ivor Peterson was born in October of 1943 near Nashville, Tennessee. And he extremely smart, really smart, graduated from Duke University with a bachelor's degree in political science. I'm going to say really smart and perhaps not real ambitious. I think he might have just loved skating by. I think he would have been thrilled to death to be like a trust fund baby, and it just didn't happen. So when he was at Duke University, he was the president of the Sigma Nu fraternity, which I think we find out later is because he liked handsome young boys wearing jock straps. I'm just kidding. I don't know what he wanted him to wear. But he was the editor of the Chronicle, the daily student newspaper from 64 to 65. So he attended classes at the law school of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill after leaving Duke, but he didn't finish and get a law degree. He took a civilian job with the U.S. Department of Defense, where he was assigned to research arguments supporting increased military involvement in Vietnam. So this was during the height of Vietnam in the mid to late 60s. So in 65, Michael Peterson married Patricia Sue Peterson, and she was an elementary school teacher on the Rhine-Main Air Base in Grafenhassen, West Germany. Gesundheit.
What'd you call me?
Gesundheit is what I called you.
Thank you.
Okay, so they had 2 kids together, Clayton and Todd. They had 2 boys. And then in 1968, he enlisted in the Marines and served in Vietnam. In 1971, he received an honorable discharge with the rank of captain after a car accident left him with a permanent disability. Later on, when he's in North Carolina, he runs for mayor and says that he won a Silver Star, a Bronze Star with Valor, and 2 Purple Hearts. And he had all these medals, but he had no documentation backing them up. And he claimed he received one of the Purple Hearts after being hit by shrapnel when another soldier stepped on a landmine, and another one near him was shot. And he later ends up admitting that it was the car accident was his war injury. It was not shrapnel and bullets. And yeah, he was in a vehicle accident in Japan where he was actually stationed after the war as a military policeman. So I don't know where he got those medals. He could have picked them up at a garage sale, but he didn't have the documentation to back them up. But that's all right. That's okay, right? We'll let that go. I mean, he's a creative man. He's a writer. He's very, imaginative.
So he got all these injuries in a car accident in Japan?
Yeah.
So he has the Purple Heart and the green Toyota.
Yes, that's exactly what he has. The Purple Heart and the green Toyota. And for a man who is colorblind, Producer Mark, you picked out 2 really good colors that go together. I am very impressed with you. Perhaps he had the Purple Heart hanging over the rearview mirror of the green Toyota.
and then when you mix it with the red blood from the
Stop.
accident.
No, stop. That's right. You've gone too far now. So Michael and Patricia Peterson actually lived in Germany for 20 years. They befriended another American couple, Elizabeth and George Ratliff, and they had 2 daughters, Martha and Margaret. And then, of course, Michael and Patricia had the 2 sons, Clayton and Todd. So they were very good friends. George passed away, and Michael and Patricia became almost family to Elizabeth, really, helping her raise the girls, and they were just really tight. So in 1985, Elizabeth Ratliff dies in a very interesting way at the bottom of a staircase in Germany. And I'm not saying the German police didn't do their job, because it was investigated, as deeply as anything like this would. But I just, when this case was brought back up, and it's a ridiculous coinky dink. And it's tough to believe in coincidences when two women in his life die from falls down a staircase, apparently, or badly designed incidents at the bottom of a staircase. But he had absolutely no motive to kill his neighbor and friend, Elizabeth Ratliff. He had no motive at all. And here is what happened, which makes me believe him even more. After Elizabeth died from what was determined to be an intracerebral hemorrhage that happened at the top of the stairs, and she died instantly, collapsed and fell down the stairs. She was found at the bottom of the stairs the next morning by the nanny. Now, she had had dinner with Michael and Patricia the night before. He had come in. They lived very close to each other, walking distance. He had come in at the end of the evening, help her put the two girls to bed and the two daughters, Margaret and Martha, and then left. And then at some point, she was walking down the steps to the first floor of the apartment in Germany and had an intracerebral hemorrhage, died immediately, collapsed, and fell down the steps. There was very little blood at the bottom of the steps, and that makes all the sense in the world after an autopsy confirmed that she had this pretty rare disease. I'll find the name of it at some point. And it really, that's what happened. He would have absolutely no reason to kill his neighbor. I mean, let's just say they're fucking around. Probably not, because she didn't have a penis. But let's just say they're fucking around. She had left her two daughters in he and Patricia's care. Her two daughters become his wards. They already have two sons. I mean, and he takes on the role of raising this woman's daughters. And what else is fascinating to me is that 2 years later, when he and his first wife, Patricia, divorce, the two girls stay with him. So Margaret and Martha have remained loyal to their weird-ass dad and his weird-ass shit their whole lives. And when he moves to Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, they go with him. Now, Clayton and Todd go with Patricia, with their mom, during the divorce. A little weird. He raises the two kids that aren't his. She raises the two kids that are theirs. But later on, Clayton and Todd end up moving in with their dad, too. So the family ends up being reunited, but not for a while. But he's raised these two girls as they're his own. They call him Dad. And, you know, I mean, I just don't... Why would you kill someone so you get their kids? I don't think he's a kid collector. I mean, he's a weirdo, but he's not, like, that much of a weirdo. I don't know. So in 1987, he moves to Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, and he writes some books about his experiences in the Vietnamese conflict. The first one, The Immortal Dragon. The second one, A Time of War. And the third one, A Bitter Peace. He also writes a biographical kind of thing called Charlie Two Shoes and the Marines of Love Company. But he writes that in association with a journalist named David Perlmutt. And he also co-wrote something called Operation Broken Reed with Lieutenant Colonel Arthur Boyd. And he has, you know, his column in the Durham Herald Sun. He is a columnist, and unfortunately, he becomes known for his criticism of the Raleigh-Durham district attorney and of the police, the Raleigh-Durham police force, which, you know, probably doesn't do you good when you're accused of killing your wife. So, yeah, you probably don't want to, like, talk about the police, how bad they are, unless you plan on never killing anyone or even being accused of it. So he meets this beautiful woman, Kathleen Atwater, who is a high-powered executive at Nortel. And she had also gone to Duke, and so they had that in common, and they were together a long time. Like, they got together in 1989, and they didn't get married until 1997. Now, Kathleen has a daughter from her previous marriage named Caitlin. So there's Caitlin, Clayton and Todd, Martha and Margaret. So there's 5 kids now, all together. And they have this 10,000 square foot, gorgeous, palatial, colonial estate. I mean, really, gorgeous looking place. So they're all together, and December of 2001, Michael and Kathleen are outside in the hot tub, according to Michael, for quite a while. He said it was an unusually warm December night. They were out there for quite a while having some wine. Kathleen wanted to go in a little earlier. He said he stayed out probably 45 minutes to an hour longer with the dogs, and then walked into the house and around 2:40 in the morning and finds her at the bottom of the steps, dead. Now, as I said, there are many shows that cover this. I'll read the list of them so you can find them on YouTube if you would like, or on demand. I'm sure they're all available. They actually have the 911 call, and he sounds appropriately panicked. I am not a 911 operator, never have been. I've known a few. I don't know if one of their goals in training is to just constantly be keeping the person talking, the person who's calling. I understand your probably main focus is to calm them down, get as much information as you can out of them, hope it's correct, but just keep them talking. So he said, my wife is unconscious at the bottom of the steps. I think she's fallen down. And so they're asking like, well, how many stairs? It's like, does that matter right now? He's like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a crazy question.
It's just, I find a lot of 911 calls horribly annoying, and I'm quite sure that there's some wonderful explanation for why they ask what they ask, why they say what they say. I will have to ask one of my friends, Barbara, who was a 911 operator. I have a friend, Marianne, who was a 911 operator for about 6 months and couldn't handle it and quit. And I didn't blame her for a moment. I think I would just be on the phone crying all the time. But so, the questions are pretty weird. Like, what happened? How many stairs? He's like, I don't know. So he, tells the 911 operator, she was drinking some wine and she had a Valium and, so when they do the autopsy, they find that her blood alcohol level is 0.07. So she's just right on the border of being too drunk to drive, but not too drunk to walk or stumble around your estate. But she also did have the Valium also in her system. So when they arrive, take her away. There are tons of pictures that they take, which is very smart. I always wondered why the blood was... It is like 19 stairs. So he was right. He said 15 to 20. It's like 19. I always wondered why the blood was mostly located at the bottom of the staircase. That comes into play later because there are some fascinating and crazy theories as to what, really happened. And the more I read them, the more I become the conspiracy theorist. It's like, oh, shit, that makes sense. Damn it. So, she's already gone by the time that the EMTs get there. It's pretty weird the way everyone acts. His son Todd, who wasn't staying there, doesn't live there, shows up. They're saying, the police say that Todd hid the murder weapon. It's a lot. They took many types of search and rescue dogs looking for the murder weapon. They took metal detectors. It was, especially after Kathleen's sister says what she thinks the weapon is. And God bless her. If I'm ever murdered by producer Mark, don't even think about it. Fucker. I'm watching you.
I know you're watching me, but I still wouldn't kill you.
The day is young. And I wouldn't blame you some days. I wouldn't blame you at all. You would hope that someone, if they had a suspicion, that they would fight for the victim as much as Kathleen's sister, Candace, and her daughter from her first marriage, Caitlin, did. And Caitlin was all on board, and Candace too, all on board with Michael being innocent until it came out it feels very prejudicial until it came out later that he's bisexual. And suddenly they're like, oh, he killed her and here's how he did it and here's what he used. It just is a little bit heartbreaking. So it turns out that the autopsy says that she died from this matrix of injuries on her scalp, really, and a fracture of her thyroid neck cartilage. But these 7 lacerations to the top and the back of her head, they say, are consistent with blows from a blunt object, and she had died from loss of blood 90 minutes to 2 hours after sustaining the injury. Now, 90 minutes maybe, because Michael said he stayed outside. 2 hours, I don't think he could explain that or pull that off. And I also don't know that that's true. We'll find out later, because the blood expert was completely fired, and then they had to redo many trials that he commented on because he is crazy and a liar, and his education was completely made up. So at first it's, an accident. She fell on the steps, and then it becomes, no, he killed her. So after a while, after it comes out that he's bisexual, and we really have no proof that he ever acted on it. He met people online. He talked to them, but I don't know that he ever got through to meeting them and completed the act. The person he was speaking to on a website where you meet people of your own gender and hook up was an ex-military person. Apparently he had a look that he liked, flat top, muscular, young military types, probably why they spent 20 years in Germany on an Air Force base. The guy didn't show up. The guy was like, he ended up testifying in his trial. He said, it was one of those things where I could go do this gig or, fuck this old guy, or I could go do my laundry, and I'm just going to do my laundry. So the emails and exchanges between, gay sex workers that he wants to engage with are embarrassing because it's his private life, but they're also remarkably tame. And he says, I'm happily, he up front, like the first sentence, I'm happily married. I love my wife very much. I have no intention of leaving her. My life is not going to be disrupted. This is just something I'm going to do, and she knows about it. I mean, it was just, it couldn't be, more open.
Again, every time you tell one of these stories, there's a bunch of stuff I find out for the first time. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. When you see him, he's, he's like an effete intellectual, and you can see how he calls himself bisexual. I am so confused with the initials and names of sexuality now, and I have people much older than me trying to drum into my head, sexuality is more fluid than you think, sexuality is more fluid than you think. And I'm like, okay, I don't care what you do as an adult with another adult who is consenting. I don't want to know what you do with children or animals or someone who isn't consenting. That I don't want to know about. I don't care who you love or who you sleep with. That's your business. The prosecution said that Kathleen would never have tolerated this because the reason she left her first husband, Caitlin's father, was for cheating. Okay. Her first husband was cheating with a woman.
Well, but apparently he wasn't cheating, though. He was just...
Michael, for all accounts, had not slept with anyone during their marriage. He may have told her about his interest, may have, gotten approval from her, or you do that and don't tell me about it. I don't know. We'll never know. She's not here to answer. But I couldn't believe how open and honest his message to this, gay sex worker was. It was so clear. Like, he's like, look, I would love to meet you. I'm interested in this. I am married. I am happily married. I mean, it's the most open, honest thing I've ever read. It doesn't sound so great if you're accused of killing your spouse in hindsight, but it actually is pretty amazing that he did.
It's that's an odd turn for me. For
well,
the story.
this is just unfortunately the tip of the iceberg, my darling. This case, the reason it's one of my favorites is because it's been covered so dramatically by so many different outlets and media, but it's got so many twists and turns and so many layers. It almost could appear comical. And there's nothing funny about Kathleen Peterson's death. Nothing at all funny. A 48-year-old woman in the prime of her life, nothing at all funny about that. The things that have happened after that have come out, pretty effing weird, I'm just going to say. So Michael said that Kathleen knew about his lifestyle, attempted or not completed, I don't know. Everyone said their marriage was really happy. He treated her great. She loved him. They had a very similar sense of humor. It's a weird sense of humor because I remember seeing him interviewed once and thinking, you're crazy, aren't you? Because one of the things he said to a reporter was, sometimes we would go to a bakery and buy a wedding cake because we just wanted a wedding cake. And I was like, well, me too, but typically it's when I'm sad and I'm alone. I've never taken Mark to buy a wedding cake except for when we got married.
Well, there was that time you were sleepwalking and had me do it.
What flavor did we get?
You got it was chocolate with some sort of vanilla,
cream cheese, I say?
No, not cream cheese. It was the kind you like, the buttercream thing.
Yeah.
But
I can actually picture that.
But I didn't wake you up because I was afraid they'd say you don't wake up somebody when they're sleepwalking because they'll kill you.
I think that's very smart of you. So the prosecution maintains that he wanted to live his gay lifestyle, he wanted out of the marriage, and he wanted the $1.5 million insurance policy that Kathleen had on her. And he, maintains that he loved her. Sometimes he comes across as not as sincere as one would like. He's very flowery, I whisper Kathleen's name on every breath, or, it's a little, during like a press conference, it's a little overwrought, but, he's a writer. That's the way they talk, right? I'm guessing. So the defense says, Kathleen knew about his bisexuality and she was fine with it and everything is great. So after that comes out, suddenly, and I don't know if it's the Raleigh-Durham area, if it's the family is very anti-gay or bisexual, but Caitlin, her daughter, and Candace, her sister, turn on him like a 180. I mean, they turn. And not only do they turn, her sister, Candace, says, I know how she was killed. I bought her a custom-made fireplace poker called a blowpoke several years ago, and that's what he used to kill her. She says this after she walks into the house with her sister's blood at the bottom of the steps and says, where's the blowpoke? It's a 10,000 square foot house. Really, Candace? That's what you concentrate on?
I'm going to start calling you my little blowpoke.
Well, I'm just going to say I've been called worse by better people. So you call me anything you want. How about if you call me blowpoke?
Okay. So I have to spell it with a Q-U-E at the end?
No, just an accent.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm just going to settle on blowpokey.
Blowpoke. It's P-O-K-E accent.
All
Blowpoke. Right. I will not answer to blowpoke.
All right.
Call me blowpoke or call me nothing.
Blowpoke.
I'm done with this conversation.
All right.
So the blowpoke is more of a brass pole that you blow through the end of it, hence the word blow, and ignite a fire in a fireplace. And it has a small hook on the end, which you use to grab logs and move them around. It sounds, I don't know how much more fancy it is than a regular fireplace poker, except that it's called a blowpoke, and everyone thinks that's, hilariously funny. So they look all over for the blowpoke, saying that the hook on the end of the blowpoke is what caused the 7 lacerations on her scalp. Now, back to the injuries. When you hit someone with something with blunt force, typically it cracks the skull. Kathleen's skull was not cracked. What she had were 7. They're described as pitchfork-shaped lacerations. It's more like a trident, like you would see Neptune or holding a trident, like a pitchfork. Only it's a different shape. So these 7 trident or pitchfork-shaped lacerations in her skull are what killed her, and the loss of blood only at the bottom of the steps, which is pretty interesting, which will come into play later, along with why the shape of the lacerations is important. It's pretty bizarre. So Candace, the sister, thinks that it comes from the hook on the end of the blowpoke. It could be, but it would be almost like he'd have to go 1, 2, 3 hit, 1, 2, 3 hit, 1, 2. He'd have to hit her 21 times to get 3 similarly shaped lacerations in 7 parts of her skull and neck. It really doesn't make sense. As it turns out, later, the jury is contacted and they send a note saying, we're dismissing the idea of the blowpoke as the murder weapon. They just don't, they're like, it doesn't have to be that. We're still going to convict him, but it doesn't have to be that. But his sister will not let that die. She won't let it die. One of the pretty big exciting parts of the trial is when Michael Peterson's attorney shows up with pictures of a cobweb and dust-covered blowpoke that was in the garage. It had been missed by the police in their many, many searches of the house. They take many pictures. They call the police. He brings it up. It's in a glass or plastic case. He brings it up on top of the desk at the trial, and he's like, what is this? And it's like, well, that looks like a blowpoke. And here's pictures of it covered in dust and cobwebs, and it was leaning against the wall in the garage of the Peterson home, and had been for 2 years. It's one of those things where your family member gives you a gift, and they're like, this is the fucking greatest gift ever, and you're gonna love me forever because it's a blowpoke, and I gave it to you, and it's custom made, and it's got your initials on it, and it says Kathleen loves to blow and poke. And Kathleen's like, thanks, Candace. Garage. And Candace won't let it go. It's like, this was the best gift I ever gave her, and that's what was used to kill her. So what the coroner said was used to kill her had to be bendable. It had to wrap around the curvature of her skull, but then have something sharp to lacerate the scalp, which later on is posited to be, by a neighbor who's an attorney, an attack by an owl, which makes about as much sense as any other weird-ass fucking theory in this case, because it is a weird case. So,
an owl.
Yes, sir. And I have the details to explain it.
Okay.
I know. You got to hang with me.
All right.
You got to hang with me. So, during this trial, they find out that Elizabeth Ratliff, Michael Peterson's neighbor in Germany, died at the bottom of the stairs. They ask Margaret and Martha, the 2 girls he has raised from childhood, if they can exhume their mother's body, which had been transported to Texas, back to where she grew up. And at first the girls say no. But they think about it, and they think, you know what, this might be able to get our dad off of this murder case, and we can absolutely conclude that he didn't kill our mother. So they exhume Elizabeth Ratliff's body. It is concluded that she died from this intracerebral hemorrhage secondary to a blood coagulation disorder called von Willebrand's disease. So she had a hemorrhage and then her blood didn't clot easily. So she died from losing her blood. Now, weeks before she had this cerebral hemorrhage and collapsed and died, she had complained of severe persistent headaches. And the coroner determined that that's what caused her death, was this cerebral hemorrhage. So exhuming her body turned out to be a good thing, even though the horrible Durham ME said that I'm going to change her reason of death to homicide. And it's like, but why are you doing that? Her name is Barbara Radish. Why are you doing that when she died from? So it turns out that the prosecution doesn't even use that information, but they do mention it. They don't say that the ME has changed her manner of death to homicide, but they mention that Elizabeth Ratliff was found at the bottom of the steps after seeing Michael Peterson and Patricia Peterson for dinner. I think that's just enough to make the jury think, aha!
Just a little prejudicial.
Uh-huh. This guy likes to kill chicks at the bottom of the steps. Uh-huh. They actually said that he used Elizabeth Ratliff's death as a way to fake Kathleen's fall down the steps. They really feel like, he used it.
What?
Like it was a, 2 decades earlier experiment, like
a rehearsal.
A rehearsal for, I'm still married to Patricia, but I bet you in 20 years I'll be married to somebody else, and I'm not going to want to be married. I'm going to want to have sex with gay sex workers, so I'm going to need a way to get rid of them.
Yeah, let me practice now.
Yes.
Before I've even met this person.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this trial in 2003 is one of the longest trials in North Carolina history, and definitely in Durham County. So the jury finds Michael Peterson guilty of the murder of Kathleen Peterson. Now, pursuant to Scott Peterson's case and the podcast of last week, this jury, I don't even know what to say. I don't know what to say about this. So they find him guilty of first-degree murder, say that he should be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In North Carolina, denial of parole requires that you prove premeditation. So the jury says, in quotes, "We believe the murder was spur of the moment, but we also feel like it's premeditated."
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Fired. You're fired. You're fired.
Okay. Allow me to explain. When asked to explain, one juror said, well, premeditated not only meant planning hours or days ahead, it could have been premeditated like minutes or seconds before. Then it's not premeditated, you dumb fuck.
Well, I just...
Yes, thank you. This is, again, this case, juries, there's never going to be a jury of one's peers unless you are diminished mentally or, perhaps insane. And then you're going to get a jury of your peers and it should all just work out great for you. You should all go to lunch together at Denny's. It's just the worst. So he ends up being housed in the Nash Correctional Institution until he's released in 2011, which will come up later. So he runs through a list of appeals. He has different attorneys at this time because he can't afford to pay his original attorney, who, by the way, was pretty masterful. If you see any of these amazing television shows or documentaries about him, his attorney... pretty amazeballs, did a really amazing job. So after he's run through all of his appeals, which, kind of suck, His neighbor, who is an attorney, who lived next to he and Kathleen for many years, 10 years or more, T. Lawrence Pollard, asks for copies of the autopsy, everything he can get his hands on. And he's doing this pro bono. He's actually not representing Michael, so it's not even, money isn't even an issue here. So he comes up with the owl theory. And when he gets a hold of the autopsy reports, it's disturbingly plays out that it could be just that. So I had no idea that in this part of North Carolina, they have signs, which in one of the documentaries, they take the camera and take pictures of all these signs in all these national parks and walking paths. They have pictures of an owl, like picking up a child, attacking a grown adult's head, big yellow metal signs with black letters. I mean, they don't even call them owls. They call them raptors. So, and apparently pretty common in the Raleigh-Durham area. Pretty common.
Who knew?
Not me. I sure the hell didn't. But the details that come out are startling and kind of bizarre. So one person who had been attacked by an owl said it felt like he was being hit in the head with a baseball bat. Sort of makes sense. The owl's talons fit perfectly in the trident wounds in her head. Perfect trident talon. They just fit. It's horrifying. Her hands had clumps of her own hair in them at the bottom of the steps, hair and blood. And that was thought she was obviously grabbing her head when she was either A, falling down the steps, which it would be a bit more explainable that why is there not a lot of blood because she's at the bottom of the steps. What the people who believe the owl theory believe happened is that she came around to the front door. There's 2 drops of her blood on the front porch. If she had fallen down the steps and hit her head, and that's where she laid and that's where she died, there'd be no reason for her blood to be out front. She would have come in the back door. It's the back staircase that probably goes like from the kitchen upstairs down to the first floor. And she's at the bottom of these steps. What they feel happened is as she came in the front door, perhaps was attacked by the owl. It's nighttime, remember, when they're out, and stumbled in and landed at the bottom of the steps. That's really what they think happened. And it unfortunately, I can't even believe I'm saying this, makes motherfucking sense. So in her wounds, there is found to be microscopic feathers. There are only 1 or 2 birds in known history that have microscopic feathers. One of them is the owl. The barred owl, B-A-R-R-E-D. The barred owl has microscopic feathers on its feet. Her wounds have microscopic white feathers in the wounds. There's also a piece of a wooden sliver of a specific tree in the wounds. Could be that the owl had it on its crazy little talons. The hair in her hands, she has pulled out by the root ball, meaning she's pulled it out by the root. It didn't break off in her hands. She's pulled her own hair out by the roots, possibly trying to get the owl out of her hair. And there are microscopic owl feathers in her hands and around that hair.
Wow.
I know. It's crazy. So, of course, there are, the prosecution's like, fuck you, old man. You're not representing Michael Peterson. Take your fucking bird theory and hit the bricks. But it's a little bizarre. It just, unfortunately, kind of lines up with what could have happened. It's really creepy. The fact that the wounds on her scalp are trilobed and paired, meaning the owl is using both of its talons to attack her head, And the feathers, the fact that she's at the bottom of the steps, not that she had started at the top and fallen down, but that she had stumbled in the house, laid at the bottom of the steps, and maybe bled to death, would explain why there's 2 drops of her, blood on the porch out front. Like she was trying to run in the house to get away from the owl attack, if it could happen. So, of course, many people are like, you're stupid, shut up, take your fucking owls and put them in a barn and fuck off. However, Attorney Pollard has some people that are experts on this, including a Dr. Alan Norman, who wrote, "The multiple wounds present to me that an owl and Mrs. Peterson became entangled. I don't know if the owl got in her hair or she grabbed the owl's foot, but they had a fight." Dr. Patrick Reddig, professor of veterinary medicine at the University of Minnesota, wrote, "In my professional opinion, the hypothesized attack to the face and back of the head, resulting in various punctures and lacerations visible in the autopsy photos, are entirely within the behavioral repertoire of the large owl family." Now, here's my favorite, only because of where she works. Dr. Kate Davis. She's the executive director of Raptors of the Rockies. Sorry, the Raptors of the Rockies.
That sounds like
a team.
Well, it sounds like a really bad 70s vocal group, like the Starland Vocal Band.
Oh my God, that's awesome. What do you think the Raptors of the Rockies would sing? Get out of my hair, owl. Get your talons out of my head.
All right, we're booking studio time.
Stop making me bleed. Oh, you know what? The Raptors of the Rockies, I think, would sing like very big, dramatic, like yacht rock or something.
Oh, yeah.
But like Ethel Merman.
Ooh.
Get out of my hair, owl. I've got owls in my hair. Who could ask for anything more?
I think you just broke the microphone. But that is a great sound. Nobody ever thought of that. See, you're a born record producer.
I really am. No one ever listens to me. Thank you, Producer Mark, for listening to me. I'm the Phil Spector of the podcast / music producing world, right. Minus the murder. So the executive director of the Raptors of the Rockies, a Western Montana education and wildlife rehabilitation project, wrote, "The lacerations on Mrs. Peterson's scalp look very much like those made by the raptor's falons, especially if she had forcibly torn the bird from the back of her head. That would explain the feathers found in her hand and the many hairs pulled out by the root ball. The size and configuration of the lacerations could certainly indicate the feet of a barred owl." I just think that's so fascinating. And she went on to say that, these owls can kill species much larger than themselves, and it's not uncommon for them to attack people, which I just think is so fascinating. Owl. So this doesn't get him a new trial.
Isn't that amazing?
It
that
really
kind of
is.
Evidence can't. I mean, it's so exculpatory.
Well, here's what does get him a new trial. The blood expert for the SBI, the State Bureau of Investigations, Dwayne Deaver, is the principal witness against Michael Peterson. He is found in August of 2010 to be a complete fraud and a liar. It's so awful, the videotapes of him trying to recreate Kathleen Peterson's death. He has a styrofoam mannequin head with a wig on it, and he's bashing the shit out of it on the steps and along the wall, trying to make the correct blood pattern. He stands at the top of a ladder and drops the wig holder head. It looks like a kid doing science experiments, except he's supposed to be the blood expert. He had a weekend course like a 2-day course in, blood stain analysis. He said that he had worked on 500 cases, written 200 reports, and had testified in 60 cases. He's written 47 reports, not 200. The man he called his mentor said, I have never mentored this man. I don't know who he is. He completed a 2-day training course in the 1980s, and he's only testified in 4 cases, with Michael Peterson's case being his 3rd.
Okay, and this guy got hired by the police.
The state, the SBI, the State Bureau of Investigations for North Carolina.
Wow. Yeah. I think I'm moving there. I'm a magical king lawyer god.
You
and
are.
I should be, the Supreme. I should be on the state Supreme Court.
You should.
I'm going to go and I got an application right here.
Hold on, I'm writing that down. Writing that down. Mark is Supreme God, lawyer god, wizard. I didn't remember what all your words were, but they were really good. So suffice it to say, Dwayne Deaver is fucking, fired. They have to go through every one of his cases. And, it's like they're going to have to overturn like everyone's murder conviction because he's a lying sack of shit. So in December of 2011, Michael Peterson is released on $300,000 bail and placed on house arrest with a tracking device on his ankle. The judge said that Dwayne Deaver gave materially misleading and deliberately false testimony about bloodstain evidence and had exaggerated his training experience and expertise. You think? So Judge Hudson orders a new trial from Michael Peterson. And then anything else that Dwayne Deaver has to say should be said into his own hand and then thrown into the wind because it's effing bullshit to the max. So he's out for 2 years, year and a half, maybe 2 years, and waiting for his next trial. So he keeps trying to get the trials dismissed, but that doesn't work. But what the judge does say is, okay, we're going to give you a new trial on May 8th of 2017. So the news comes out on February 7th of 2017 that there's some talk going on, and his original trial attorney, David Rudolph, who masterfully, defended him in the first trial that, where the jury said, well, it was a spur of the moment thing, but it was premeditated. Those people, he actually really did an amazing job. I'm sorry, I added the snort. Like? Yes. You know why? Because they were drinking their moonshine and snorting owl feathers. That's why they sounded like that. It's the owl feathers. So David Rudolph is representing him again, and he does a fantastic job. But what he does is negotiate an Alfred plea. So an Alfred plea says, I acknowledge that you guys have enough evidence to have this next trial again, hopefully with people who don't snort owl feathers. And I'm not going to admit guilt, but I'm going to say I'm pleading. My name's Dave Alfred. I don't know. And I'm saying you have enough to convict me or at least bring me to trial, but I'm not guilty. So what can we do? So the judge sentences him to less time than he's already served. So he is allowed to leave and he is free. He is still considered a felon. He's 73 years old. Now he's 75. His once stepdaughter that loved him and his wife's sister, who's cray-cray, I mean, seriously cray-cray, they are still, not fans of his. So at the sentencing hearing a few months later, Candace, Kathleen's sister, who, like I said, I feel for the woman because she's lost her sister. she's lost her sister in what was probably a really shitty thing that we really will never know what happened, no matter how many of these amazing pieces of television that you want to watch. You're probably going to come up with your own opinion of Michael Peterson, good or bad, but we're not ever really going to know what happened. But so here's just a few of the TV shows. Dominic Dunn had a show called Power, Privilege, and Justice, and he called it Murder, he wrote. Aphrodite Jones has True Crime with Aphrodite Jones. The Staircase Killer. The Devil You Know. Stairway to Hell. Storyville has a show called Death on the Staircase. Storyville has Death on the Staircase 2, The Last Chance. Dateline NBC, Down the Back Staircase. Cold Case has a show called Debut, because he's a writer, get it? The New Detectives, Written in Blood. American Justice, Blood on the Staircase. My favorite, Forensic Files, A Novel Idea. Sorry. So all of these shows you can see, and not even including the two full-length documentaries, The Staircase and down the back staircase, and Michael Peterson likes it up the back staircase, or whatever the fuck it is. It's so much. So Candace Zamperini, Kathleen Peterson's sister, really enjoys her victim impact statement during Michael Peterson's sentencing. The words Alfred plea, they're meaningless. Alfred Schmelford, it means nothing. It means you're guilty. It means nothing. It means you're guilty. She says that twice. You're pleading to voluntary manslaughter. You'll be treated as guilty for murdering my sister Kathleen, and you'll be a convicted felon forever. This hearing today is as close to justice as anything I think can be. You not only get to wear the scarlet letter A for adultery, you get to wear the black letter G for guilty. This is not perfect justice, but it's justice. And then she sits down because she's like, and by the way, I want my bloody blowpoke back.
She did not say that.
No, she didn't.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I just have to add
that. Was a boy, you got into that character. You got into that. That was a great dramatic reading.
If you see poor Candace Zamperini, she actually could be a really good spokesperson for the evils of plastic surgery, because 2 years prior to whenever all of her interviews took place, which I'm going to guess had to be fairly recent, probably in 2016 or 2017. So let's say in 2014, she looked like a well-dressed, distinguished older lady. Nice clothes, interesting makeup. Her hair wasn't too young, too old. It was perfect for age appropriate. 2 years later, she looks as if someone has placed wax lips on top of hers and ironed them onto her face. They have pulled her eyes so far back, they are now pretty much into her scalp, which I hope never gets lacerated by an owl. And she just looks crazy. And at the end of, I believe it's the ID Network's, An American Murder Mystery, again, down the back staircase, just awful names. She tries to cry, and she can't. She can't really cry.
Oh, that's kind of sad.
I know. I'm guessing they had to take her tear ducts when they pulled her eyeballs back to her. It just makes you think, let's just all pray to grow old gracefully and not do fucking weird shit to our faces, unless we get attacked by an owl, and then I say go for it. Spend all the money you want restoring your owl scratched face. So that, my beloved Tip-Sters, is the story of the evil, maybe not so much, Michael Peterson and more cowbell.
And remember, if you've got a tip for Melissa, give her a call at 832-TIPSTERS. That's 832-847-7837. Or send her an email to jttipsters@gmail.com.